I would like to state for the record that my name is Vickie Jean Hartman, and I am interviewing Vickie Summers. We are in Hastings, Nebraska, and today's date is November 26th of 2017. Hi,
Nana! Hi,
Vickie! When and where were you born?
When? September 21st, 1955 in Hastings, Nebraska, near Lanning.
What are your parents' names?
John Roger and Shirley Jean Schmidt.
What were their occupations?
My dad was in the Marines, and then he was a carpenter. He built the high school, helped build the high school here in Hastings. And then he was with the Postal Department for 30-some years. When he retired, my mom worked at Motor Day, and then was a house mom, and then worked at Segway.
How many siblings do you have? Biological siblings, yeah.
Including me? 4. 3 brothers and a sister.
And what are their names and occupations?
My brother, the oldest, Steve, he is retired. And my next brother is David, and he is retired from the Navy and lives in California. And my baby brother, Larry, currently is not working because he had 2 strokes this summer. And my sister, who is the baby, Sue, is a probation officer.
So to continue to expand kind of on your personal background and your childhood, where did you grow up? Was it here in Hastings, elsewhere?
Yes, here in Hastings.
How would you describe your childhood?
It was a good childhood. Just went without stop. It didn't know any different. Had 11 parents. And they just were always there for us. And
Particularly active, or were you home more or out and about more?
no, we were home a lot, but back then you didn't do a lot. If you had pop, that was a treat. Sundays you might get to go out to eat once in a while, but for the most part, didn't have all the fast food places and didn't eat out a lot. We went to the drive-in. That was the best thing. On Saturday nights, and we'd wear clothes in our hair and wear pajamas, and there's 4 or 5 families that we all went out and watched the movie at the drive-in. That was a treat.
Nice. What socioeconomic class would you say your family belonged to? Like, were you more middle class, lower kind of?
I'd say probably middle class.
What activities did you participate in as a child? I mean, housework, obviously, going into the drive-in. Did you do any sports or anything like that?
No, I didn't do sports.
Just like, nope. Do you feel that having a veteran as a father impacted your childhood at all? Was Grandpa a little different than the other dads? Was he maybe a little more cautious about things, or?
No, it was something we never talked about. He was in the Korean War, and until he had Alzheimer's, before he had Alzheimer's, but when we wanted him to go to the VA and see about getting some hearing aids, he just didn't think that was right, because he went into the Marines to protect the country, and we watched a lot of stuff, and he just something he never talked about until I had to fill out paperwork for him to go to the VA. But that was very hard for him because he said he watched a lot of his friends die beside him and a lot of things. So that wasn't something he ever talked about. He participated in the Marine Corps League The VFW, they were very active, and uh, as kids were always went along. That was back when you took your kids to everything, and so went to Marine Corps balls, went to Marine Corps suppers, Marine Corps picnics.
Growing up during the time frame that the Vietnam War was going on and everything, do you feel that that affected your childhood
No.
at all? What about your school experiences, particularly during high school and that, with everything, the changing coming out of the Vietnam War and everything? What were your experiences in high school?
Really, just um,
The standard, you just
regular go to school and come home, do your chores during the week, especially did your homework and had chores to do, and during the summertime chores and weekends you might have to do something, but
what about like having older students and things like that in high school? Like, did you become friends with anyone who was drafted or anything, or did you have to experience that at all, or with your older brothers?
no, I experienced my oldest brother, and he went to Vietnam. But back then, I don't know, just nothing was really talked about that I remember that you really knew what was going on. And my second brother was in the Navy. He was on a submarine, but he went in right out of high school. But no, it just wasn't something that was talked about.
Did you participate in any of the social movements during your
No.
teenage? Were they very prominent around here in Hastings or anything?
No.
And did you have any particular views on that? Like, you've talked about how it wasn't really talked about. When you did hear about it, was there any particular feelings you had, or what were those feelings?
I don't know, just that feeling bad that the ones that never come home are the ones that come home that are disabled, or how it affected their lives. That's the hard thing to this day, that you have these people, women and men, giving up their lives to protect us, and that you have all this going on, which back, and maybe that's why, because growing up you didn't have all this. It's going on now.
Did your parents have particularly strong opinions? Was that something that was discussed at all, your parents' views on it?
No.
So then that wouldn't have an influence on you either, just because
No.
it just wasn't talked about.
No.
So how did you meet Papa? How did you meet your current spouse?
I was a waitress at the OK Cafe by the old Union Pacific Railroad tracks, and he'd come in every night and order strawberry malt and cheeseburger.
Same thing all the time?
Yep, all the time. He lived in a camper by the tracks, and so when he come in, I knew what he wanted.
So when you were getting to know Papa, was it ever really discussed that he was a veteran? Did it really matter? Did it influence anything at all?
Not when we were dating, no.
When you got married, did that have any influence on?
No, just proud that married a veteran and was a daughter of a veteran, was a sister of a veteran. Once you know what all's going on, makes a difference.
Do you feel like Papa's veteran status kind of helped with like getting along with Grandpa and stuff, like that might have helped at all with them getting along or like having things to talk about? Since you
No,
said Grandpa didn't
'cause
talk about it.
they really didn't. That wasn't something that they talked about either. But then he was in a different time than what Dad was, so that was just something that was never really brought up, other than, like I said, when we went to the Marine Corps things.
Mm-hmm.
Bob was very active, going, and we just enjoyed it, and the same with the VFW. We just met a lot of, we made a lot of friends from Mom and Dad's friends from the VFW, and it continued on through our married life. Most of them aren't here anymore, but a lot of friendships were made.
So from what I know of Papa, he's always been quite opinionated and quite okay with sharing that opinion. Has it always been that way?
Yes.
Did that have any influence during the time frame, especially like with Vietnam going on, like at the very end of Vietnam that was still going on, and that like, or the after dealing with the aftermath? Was that something that you guys really discussed? So prior to meeting Papa, or towards the beginning, what did you want your wedding to be like?
I don't know. Just a big wedding with my friends as bridesmaids, and
Something more traditional and kind of
not really anything exact.
Yeah. So what were your thoughts on marital life prior to getting married, and what it should be like? Like, what were your expectations with being married?
Oh, I think the only thing was that the love that I grew up with my parents, I always wanted to have a relationship like them, that they showed their love and affection to each other, and my dad did cooking and cleaning and stuff, so I just thought that was different, that he chipped in on whatever. So
Just something that was a little more balanced rather than kind of the atypical he leaves and you do everything kind of thing. So you and Papa got married, and do you feel that everything that was going on during the time frame had any effect on how fast you got married or how the wedding was planned or anything? Like, was there items that like people have talked about? In other words, there have been shortages of items and things like that. Was there anything that you had to face with that during the time frame, or maybe people rushing to get married so it was harder to find locations?
No, we just set our date, and that was when we got married, and we had already bought our house ahead of time, so
Had everything all planned, and it went.
Yeah, my mom made my bridesmaids dresses, and
That's really cool. I never knew that actually.
Yeah, so that was pretty neat to have her do that.
So now that once you finally became married, were those expectations, like, is that how your married life has gone? Has that kind of met your expectations, or maybe changed your expectations a little?
No, the first years were quite a while with Pop on the road, and the hours that he worked, I felt that since I was a stay-at-home mom at the time, that I needed to take on more so that he didn't have to, but that's something I chose to do.
Mm-hmm.
But there's not anything that I feel that I would change, or that we do for each other. If one can't, the other one does it, or today clean the way I cooked. So, and his parents were kind of that way too. I mean, you could see the love and
You touched on this, but growing up the daughter of a veteran, you had a lot of pride in being the sister of a veteran. So now being a veteran's wife, were you treated differently at the Marine Corps balls or anything else now that you were also married to a veteran?
no. Those people back then treated everybody as if we were all the same. We never felt belittled or that anybody was better than you. They welcomed you and just always was a fun time.
Do you think that Grandpa being a veteran affected his marriage with Grandma at all? Or affected their relationship with other people? I mean, you talked about how it kind of opened up a new group of friends by being able to be part of the Marine Corps League and the VFW.
Yeah. I don't know. When they got married and then my dad left, um, the next day, I believe. And so she lived with her mom and dad. And then when he was stationed out here at the ammunition depot, um, there were probably 6 other Marines, and they all married their sweethearts from Hastings while they were here. And so when they all, after they were married and had kids, us kids all grew up together, and we um, did things together, and it was just like one big family. And till someone moved away after a while, but it was just a different kind of respect and um, kind of need that those Marines married the Hastings girls and
And stayed around.
then stayed around when they came back, and us kids grew up together, and we still are in touch with one of the wives, and that's it out of the group. The rest have passed.
In that same regard, do you feel like with being married to Papa, who's a veteran, do you feel like your marital life would have been differently if you had married someone who wasn't a veteran? Do you think your presence at those Marine Corps balls or anything would have changed or anything?
No. I think my parents involved us in that, and so for the time I used to, they had a little dress made, just like in women's uniforms that they wore from the VFW, and we sold poppies, and I was in the parade with my little dress, and so we were involved from the time I can remember that in that. So I don't know that it would have been any different for me. He may have, may have been plus that he had been in the service, understanding that. I don't know that if I hadn't, if they would understand why I would want to be that involved. But
I guess we've kind of touched on a lot of these other questions about like your thoughts during the war and that, but it just wasn't something that really you guys talked about or really affected life here in Hastings. And we talked about how having friends, family drafted in that. So, what is your view on war in general from back then to now? And do you think that has living through one war already and knowing that Steve went and that changed your view and now having your own son?
I don't know, that's because of my mother.
And that's that's something we haven't brought up.
That was scary. And when we went to Iraq, that was really scary. And some of the stories when at home that he told, I guess it's probably good that I didn't know some of the things that go on. And I guess that's why I don't understand how people can protest or go to people's funerals, a veteran's funeral that they don't know, and do all that to a family um, because they have, unless they've been over and been in those places, they have no idea what our service people and our veterans ever went through.
Do you believe that your view on war would be any different if you hadn't been surrounded by veterans?
No.
Because you mentioned that you didn't talk about it at home or anything, and you weren't super affected by it and growing up or anything. So
I guess I was just more curious, but I didn't ever bring it up because it wasn't something that I knew was talked about. So other than that, he got married and he had to leave, and he was at the ammunition depot, and um, I guess I wondered I guess how they met because since my dad was from Wisconsin and my mom was from Hastings, how they met, and that's when I found out that they all married these Marines. But that was pretty much the extent. Same thing. But I think it's, I guess, sad that people. I mean, I understand after him telling me some of the things that he went through when he was in Korea.
Too many?
I don't know.
You understand why they don't talk about it,
Yeah,
but
I understand why they don't talk about it.
looking back at the wars that have gone on, everything else, does it change your view on veterans or anything? Has it ever affected your thoughts of like how it's been? If you plot them out there, some of them are really close together and some of them are, sometimes we have that gap, but just in general, the fact that it seems to be something that just will continue to pop up in our society and then in the world in general. Does that change your view at all?
No, I'm just thankful for our service people and veterans because it's like the people that work in hospitals or fires or anything, we didn't have people like that did those things, put their lives out in front. Where would we be?
Definitely agree.
Pretty sad.
Well, thank you, Nana.
Thank you.
Now talk.
I can remember Dad not talking about anything because it wasn't something they got out and it was just not let's go see what the benefits we can get for everything. Like, but I found out that there was 30 below zero. And he had frostbite, his feet and hands, and but that was just accepted. And now, I guess one thing that I can say different is that people come and tell all these stories, and you wonder if they're true because the generation that I have with my dad, that wasn't something they talked about, and it was almost like with a lot of when I was middle school, high school, or high school that you hear people talking. It's almost like bragging, we killed whatever, and all that. And when they get out, they're like, well, they owe me. And This just whole different attitude, I think, of when my dad was there, and then probably be a murder, whatever, I can say, affected me. And I think that the ones that deserve it and have true needs need to be taken care of. But I think there are some that try to take advantage of that. Or they go there because they don't want to lose school for whatever reason. But just so they can do that.
So some people have kind of mentioned how, like, the passing of time, now people feel comfortable talking about it because they want help. Do you feel like your dad just didn't want help, or was it just a factor of, like, he thought he could deal with it on his own? Like, that was his way of handling it, was not talking about it.
I think it was just something that they didn't talk about. Because none of that group that my parents were around with talked about it. Even when they were together, just playing cards, doing anything, there wasn't something that they talked about. It was, as my dad said, he served this country and he did what he had to do. It wasn't something that
He didn't take pride in what he had to do, just the fact that
was just, he was proud to be, very, very proud to be a Marine. And that was, he never talked about his freedom. When he was worried, not the bad stuff with it, or he didn't dwell on that stuff. He just, I think, and that's why he never went for VA benefits, because he didn't feel that they were good to him. No matter what.
So the one thing that we haven't touched on is that you have 3 children. My own mom, Heather. You have middle son, Rob, and your youngest son, Chad, who's been a police officer, joined the Navy right out of high school, and then has re-enlisted in the Army later on. And Chad is medically retired now, and seeing kind of the toll that it's taken on him physically as well as mentally.
Right.
Like, your views on that, and kind of like how that's affected you as a parent.
Yes. Yeah. It has changed, you could tell that it has.
You got something to drink?
Some of his
Need something to drink, Renee?
personality and his whatever, kind of a more laugh, kind of looks at things different. His wife will tell you the same thing. You know, didn't come back the way he left. But when you hear that, he tells you that, you know, you hear things at night and you go out and it's kids and the Iraq teach their kids this stuff. And that's what's hard to believe is that, you know, they put them out there and they throw rocks and there's just, you know, order one type of what was happening to them and, you know, you hear gunshots and, you know, so technology, for one, because we were able to correspond with him, and you hear the things in the background. So I'm not sure how my dad's generation did get through all that with what I do now, but I know that affected me. When I was in the Navy, he was on a ship, you know, and went all over. But in the Army, when he went to Iraq, that was a whole different.
See ya.
Like I said, I could hear shotguns in the back, and then now he's back in law enforcement. And he said, Mom, what else would I do? That's all I know. Law enforcement and military, and I just keep asking him why he puts himself in that position, but there again, if somebody didn't do it.
Yeah.
But I just want him to be their own. But I'm proud of him that he feels that way and does want to be on that end of to protect in the service and in law enforcement. So just makes feelings when you want it your own. But there's a lot of other ones, and there's been way too much killing with law enforcement that they put their lives out there every day for us, and I just don't understand.
Do you think that for Chad it's a little different? Because I know from my experience Chad doesn't talk as much about it. He's more willing to talk than Grandpa ever was, but he still doesn't. I mean, it's not something that he's just generally going around flaunting. So do you think that growing up with Grandpa and Papa and kind of Papa's family that's full of that has plenty of veterans also, Papa's family's a little more open talking about things. Grandpa wasn't too. But do you think that growing up with that generation that doesn't talk about it, do you think that's kind of guided Chad during?
Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure it had, because just not something. I guess that's what I always said was weird that people come back and brag about stuff or talk like they do about it. Like, really, if fucking.
Yeah.
Because most people don't, you just don't. And like I said, there wasn't much that I knew, but except when you hear it and, find out that these kids, that they're actually recruiting kids to do this stuff, that's sad. And so, yeah, I think him growing up around veterans, because Bob says, was a well-rounded veteran family also, so had it on both sides.
Did it? How much did it affect you, like getting to know Papa's family now? Because Tim's reserves, if I remember correctly, retired. He's finally retired. And like Uncle Joe being in for so long and that, like, did having kind of the in-law family still serving, how did that affect you guys as well? Because I know Uncle Joe was still serving while I was a kid. Because I remember going to stay with Aunt Michelle. So.
I just think that, you're scared, but you're so proud that you have family that is willing to do that. I guess scared, but I guess, like I said, if you didn't have those people where we now, so as a sister-in-law, mother-in-law, it just makes you really proud to have, in the last 44 years, been involved in both sides, with Memorial Day and going to cemeteries and flags, and there's a lot of positive things that come out of it. And there's a lot of disaster, but if we didn't have that, what would we like to have?
Yeah.
Maybe add clear back. And then, even now, how many military, when they talk about thousands over there, and to protect us. And so, if we didn't have all that, what would this world be? It's kind of scary. That's scary. But that's scarier than, I guess, knowing that. And you know that, like with Chad, that's what he wanted to do. So, when you go in a second time around, then you know that that's really, you're really proud to know that he's willing to be one of those thousands and thousands of people to protect us like whole world. And back in the days when they had to draft people, that didn't want to be there, opposed to now, where, they go on their own, makes, I'm sure, some difference. I'm sure you get some that think they want to do that, and they don't, but when it's drafting, they didn't have a choice. So, it's another difference, too.
So one thing we kind of talked about was the deferments that they used to have, like an educational deferment and some kind of health deferment. Like, was that something that personally, anybody who kind of did that, who maybe relied on a deferment to not go, was it something that maybe the boys at school talked about, was going or not going?
There was talk of, they hoped the draft would be over because they didn't want to go. But I was going with a guy I was with, he went specialist. And then I never heard from him again. There was a million medics, so trying to, but I don't know how to learn I don't think it finished this time, but, he was a little older than us, so, that was the only time I had, my guys were after his win, but I think that had something to do with it because they didn't go to college or they were in trouble. And so maybe get in trouble or whatever, so they went in for those reasons. And then it wasn't a piece of cake like they thought it was going to be.
Being so far away from where most people would consider a naval base to be or anything else with the Naval Ammunition Depot here, and how many recruiters come through, do you think that that's a lot of the reason that people around this area go in is more because of like situational stuff where they don't, because Hastings is so small that they're looking for something different or anything more than just a desire to serve?
I think there's some, but I don't think it's many more because of recruiters. I think it's more they either want to or they don't want to.
Mm-hmm.
If they can't find a job, maybe then, like I said, they go in.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not as I had no idea until Chad. Well, what it all entails.
Mm-hmm.
They're currently back to that. So, I can imagine. Not unless you're actually trying to evolve your things. Interestingly enough, kind of joined the National Guard as I probably could have been deployed twice in that clothes they wear. I kept asking Chad, aren't you hot? Aren't you, because they were long sleeve, heavy uniforms. And then you find out that they have to do PT with the stuff on their backs because when they do go over wherever they actually, have to be able to carry 100 pounds or whatever it is. I know it's a lot on their backs. So, unless you know that, and I don't know what they tell them that, if they told them having to do it, it's two different things too.
Do you think that when you heard everything that Chad was gonna have to do with basic and everything else, did the worry start there, or was the worry just from the day he told you he was signing up, or kind of?
No, probably more.
And since they supposedly trying to cut the
Because it's for real. I mean, it's for real, but
Times were safer. You didn't have to worry so much about a war breaking out necessarily.
So, seeing him in training and, having to do all this stuff.
Well, my favorite,
But
yeah.
you have to use what you've learned. And when I flew out there to see him leave, I don't think I'll ever forget that. Because that's one thing I can say too, I guess, is that my daughter-in-law lived in Hastings and all of her life too. So when he got stationed in Texas and they hadn't and had a new baby, so had a baby a month old and a daughter, and when he was deployed,
Makes sense.
that was another whole new experience too, because you go to the base and you go there at 3 in the morning, and the stuff, the bags and all the stuff that they have, when he took out of his trunk, and to watch each night and going on 5, watch her daddy, just it was remarkable to see them line up
Don't say because FP on 3
and march away, and when you went around the corner, that was it.
Yeah.
That was it. You didn't see them. You knew they were going to be gone, going to Iraq, and there was no more hugs, no more nothing, because once they take them around that building, that's it. And watching the families, the tons and tons and hundreds of families that were there with their kids, and watching Mackenzie cry, and her daddy not understanding that, and then for the wives that came to my daughter-in-law and said, we're all going over to so-and-so's house. Why don't you join us? And
It's 7:40.
Yep.
We said 8 o'clock.
that was very touching because she didn't really know him.
Mm-hmm.
And so for them to invite her, I was so impressed and thought, she'll be alright. So we all went over there and the kids played and the moms all sat around and talked. There was ones for their first time, some for their 7th time, all different various wives that had been through and stuff was for her first time. But because not knowing that, I thought that was so touching that the military wives
Had their own kind of community, and
said, come on, come join us. And then that summer, they did swimming and they included her. And so I felt better when I left, knowing that she was going to have some support there since she didn't have a family there. And that was an awesome feeling. And then when they come back, I wasn't there, but the way they do that when they come back, but it's just so international. People, as they came over, were protesting a range of different family services that knew what they knew and doing that to the family. I just don't understand that because of what has touched my life, and Chad's probably touched me more than anything because of that, because of watching his wife and daughter go through that and so many miles away, and all their family back here in these things, and knowing that you were going to leave her there, and Yeah. And I don't know if you come back. But military is a family. That's